Deoxys-Defense is one of the two Deoxys forms that was regulated down into the OU tier, something that these two forms have not seen at all. While the speed version has been incredibly viable with hazard lead options or hyper offensive stats, it seems as if the defensive form is all now forgotten. Despite its incredible defensive stats, this Pokemon is receiving less and less attention in the metagame right now. So what happened? Well, before I answer that, be sure to subscribe as we're on the road to 20k, and I know many of you guys watching are not subscribed, so if you guys enjoy, be sure to tag along. Thank you, and let's get back to the video. Although Deoxys-Defense has been regulated to the Uber tier since its introduction in Generation 3, it's always felt like it's never been treated like one. This Pokemon has a lot of shortcomings when it comes to a defensive monster. In the Ubers tier more specifically, especially since the start of Generation 6 onwards, Deoxys-Defense was regarded as having an awkward speed stat because it wasn't slow, yet not that fast in order to warrant EV investment into it when looking at other Uber Pokemon. Its mono psychic typing as well proved to be more of a hindrance as the generations progressed, because psychic by itself is probably one of the worst typings you could have for a defensive Pokemon, as it doesn't provide any offensive or defensive advantage as compared to other types. Pokemon like Yveltal or Darkrai, etc. were all able to take advantage of a lackluster typing and turn its defensive identity against it. Generation 6 and Generation 7 was the advent of new tools as well, such as Z-moves or Megas, but more specifically Mega Pokemon like Mega Gengar threatened it out pretty easily, and Mega Scizor could be immune to Toxic while resisting Ice Beam or Knockoff and hit it back even harder with his bug type moves. Defensively, although it is designed like one, it kept falling behind as the generations progressed further and further ahead. This description from Smogon's analysis of Deoxys-Defense in Generation 7 also just sums it up pretty perfectly. It is good only to a hazard setter, but other than that, its lackluster offenses and defensive typing hold it back in the Ubers tier with all the strong legendaries. It is too niche for powerful Ubers metagame now that there are better and better Pokemon. Pokemon like Ferrothorn, for instance, could also replace as well as a hazard setter because it was just better defensively. Deoxys sure had Recover and was a faster setter, which was probably the only pros it had in comparison, although Ferrothorn had Leech Seed for itself anyways. So when we look at Generation 9, we already had one super legendary in Zamazenta Hero form to drop down to OU, and it's actually doing pretty well now in OU. So the same mindset was given to Deoxys-Defense when it would drop down to OU. However, this level of usage drop for this Pokemon in the OU tier is still pretty interesting. It isn't even on par to the Zamazenta Hero form and probably won't even be in the OU tier by the end of this month. Deoxys-Defense in this generation lost Toxic and also lost Seismic Toss, two powerful moves it could use in order to make up for its otherwise pretty passive Pokemon. Nightshade could be looked as a replacement for Seismic Toss, but then you're also asking to be completely walled by Blissey. And just like previously, Mono Psychic is proving to be more troublesome in this tier, I would argue. Popular Pokemon like Goldango, Meowscarada, Weavile, and Kingambit are just a few Pokemon to name that can obliterate with Ghost and Dark type moves respectively. I think a good Pokemon though for comparison has to be with Toxapex. These two Pokemon are incredible defensive monsters on stats alone, and both of them even have awful offenses to compensate for it. The difference between these two Pokemon though is its typing and ability. Pressure is the standard basic default legendary ability, which doesn't do as much utility when we compare to Regenerator for Toxapex, which can recover HP outside of battle. Furthermore, Poison and Water is a much better defensive typing with many more resists than Mono Psychic, and because of Mono Psychic, this Pokemon gives me the Wo-Chien vibe, where it heavily relies on Terra in order to be decent within the tier. Even if you Terra it though, what meaningful role does it preserve itself in the OU tier that other Pokemon cannot fulfill? It cannot even do Toxic for passive damage anymore, so it's even more or less subjugated to store powered sets or hazard set variations, both of which the OU tier doesn't really require from this defensive Pokemon. Stored power would take a while to be good, and by then with its porous typing you can whittle it down a lot. Cresselia is anyways bulkier for a mono psychic typing and does the job much better with its good ability and overall better stats. Stored power sets are anyways completely nullified by dark type Pokemon, so if this Pokemon has this as its only way for offense, well, you can kiss goodbye to any sort of semblance for your team. Its hazard sets with Spikes, Taunt, Recover, and like Knockoff is also kind of laughable when you find out its speed variation just does this job 10 times better with faster speed and way more flexible offenses, which makes it way more scarier. Teleport and Future Sight are good moves, but if you need a Pokemon like that, Glowking can fulfill that role and has a much better ability and typing in comparison as well. I've tried using Deoxys-Defense before, but oftentimes it feels like I'm playing a 5v6 scenario with my opponent because of the glaring flaws I've listed with this Pokemon. It's easily outclassed, porous typing, poor ability, and it's way too passive for this metagame. We all thought that Toxapex was pretty passive, but this Pokemon takes passive to a whole nother level. There's no real reason to use this defensive Pokemon over things like Glowking, Toxapex, Tinglu, Amoonguss, Gliscor, etc., to which they all provide much better fulfilling roles for the team's needs while performing whatever Deoxys-Defense could do for one's team. Toxic? Well, Amoonguss or Glowking got you. Hazards? Well, there are a ton of Pokemon that can already do that already in a much better fashion. It's just super outclassed, and perhaps it might be able to find a role in UU or RU or something like that, but it definitely has no credible role in OU. Not a zero. Anyways, that's just my opinion on Deoxys-Defense right now. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think about this Pokemon. Thank you to my members for their continued support too. If you wish to support me even further and all these videos as well, the link to my YouTube membership and Patreon are down below. Comment down below the DNA emoji for Deoxys, join the Chompy Discord, and until next time, thanks for watching as always.